All right, let's see, where do we go with this? Oops. All right, so here goes one. Hey guys, hey guys, hello, good afternoon, Sunday afternoon. Hi, how are you? What's up, guys? What's up? All right, I'm sharing my screen. My voice should be good. Hey, today we are going to do something really different, okay? I guess we had lots and lots of dosage on Agile, Scrum, methodology, process, behavior, communication, team handling, roles, etc., etc. But today, I'm going to take you into a little bit more commercial situation. Okay, so this should be interesting because it's very great. It's very good from a business point of view. So when we are agile coach, we our help is solicited, or rather, I should say, your help will be solicited. Not just on the process and methodology and caring for the team and the deliverables and the outcome, but it will be a lot on the business side as well, which means that your likely employer, let's call it an IT company for now, because that's the most definite outcome. So they're going to use your help and understanding of delivery of agile in form of what kind of a business model we should be giving to the client. So then you know somehow also become, I would say, a contributor to the business development program. Yeah, so you help in terms of what kind of, because you are an SME of agile, so then your thought process about what form of contract should we enter, what should be our statement of work with the client, what kind of role responsibility we should take up, what kind of roles we should play. Not necessarily that it's a carte blanche. Yeah, it's not like it's 100% umbrella sweeping coverage in agile perspective, which is given to any service provider like you. Yeah, you and your company. Okay, and hence I would like you to go into what I call agile contracting. Yeah, you can imagine it's how important it is for you to participate in in leading the discussions on the business front and commercial front as well, that I've dedicated almost 70 slides for it. Okay, and this is what we're going to do today. So hopefully it will be definitely more interesting for all of you. All right, guys, let's begin in a minute. Let me just close the door here. So guys, I will start reviewing your BRDs from tomorrow, and I will respond back in the next 3 days max. So whoever has sent BRD will get their updated BRDs in about 3 days. All right. Okay, guys, so let's go to the full screen share mode. Okay. So guys, today we're going to discuss a few things on what are the types of contracts we have in Agile. How are those contracts very different from the contracts we have typically for software development lifecycle in Waterfall? Yeah. How do we price up these contracts? Okay. And what is the general commercial framework of such contracts? So what's important for today? What's important is that while you, so when you say you are an agile coach, right, it's more on the back end side. You get your requirements right from the product owner and business analyst, and then you develop it up, right? Test it, trial it, and give it back to the user. That's more of a little back end role. Now, we have often seen in the recent about like in the last about a year that agile SMEs expected to help in some front end role as well. Yeah. And some of that front end part comes from the fact that how do we actually create a contract for agile? How do we price our agile model? So while you may be good at the agile framework, way of working, etc., but in terms of how do we need to exercise that in a workable option with the clients is a point of great significance. And we wanted to enable you with that kind of a thought process, information, ability to discuss, ability to front end such discussions, and hence, the agile contracting is an essential part of the agile curriculum. Okay, contract formation for agile. So guys, typically, this, let me tell you when this contract formation happens. So this happens before any kind of a delivery starts. So before, the work steps into operations in Scrum or Agile, it's the contract is formed first, which means with the general understanding of with the client that how the team will constitute itself, what are the locations for delivery, what are the models that they will follow, what is the process, outcome, deliverables, timeline between which all the software development will be completed, and so on and on. And this detailed plan and framework, we towards the end of it we introduce what is the commercial construct of the contract. So contract formation for agile. So guys, let me also tell you a few things. It's not that a client is going to buy 100% agile model. Yeah. So today, if a lot of clients still buy the traditional model of waterfall, it's typically estimated like this. So let's say you have, a large project. So during the solution design phase, what solution architects like me do is that we break down the entire business, the business context of the client's requirements. I break them down into few understandings so as to get the complete understanding on the business construct, which processes are changing and why. Okay, and then we give a high level solution of what is the likely change we need to do in their process. Okay, which obviously necessitates software development. In that situation, what we agree upon with the client is that for the high level changes that we are going to be doing, our software development lifecycle team will be doing. So in typical waterfall, we break the construct into design, build, test, and deploy. We looking at the amount of changes which are to be done. We typically estimate how much will be configuration changes, because largely the changes are technical, which means at the code level. Yeah. So we estimate the number of efforts we will require for the code level changes, and then obviously we also estimate what will be the a total testing effort. So remember, this is part and parcel of your software development lifecycle: designing, building, coding, of course, and testing. In that situation, what we need to know is that how many test cases are likely to be employed, and that depends on how much changes you are doing in which processes. So if you're doing change in sales process, right, or customer service process, or procurement process, or finance process, typically all this, the test cases from these related areas are to be used. Okay, and so that becomes the testing effort, because how much testing is to be done depends on how many test cases are to be tested, and what is the average effort for testing a particular one particular coding cycle. And typically, guys, in any project, testing is about a good 35 to 40% of the total overall effort. Yeah, so just want to say that testing is also as important as anything else. Okay, now first of all, we quickly, you might like to give this feedback as it is solicited by considering few things. Number one, we need to identify the challenges which are raised by the client's traditional IT setup. So currently, any IT setup typically is on a waterfall model. They are either they are purely time and material. Yeah. So for example, I hire the expertise of my good friend Anchal, and I know that her expertise is more on coding and testing. So there is something called time and material. So what's going to happen is, for the entire team that's sitting right now with me, I will pay per hour basis for your efforts, right? So Anshul, Savan, Nazbeen, everybody. So they're going to come in, and I will employ about typically 8 to 9, the full working hours of a day, right? And if the let's say if the rate is 10 hours per day, and you work 9 hours, so I'm going to pay $90, for each one of you. So let's say there are 10 team members, I'm going to paying the $900 in a day. That's time and material, which means that I'm buying your agile services on time basis. Yeah. And then there is another contract thing which is called fixed price. So in that case, if I am leading this team, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to calculate the total effort which is required from all of you into this project. Let's say it is about 1,000 hours. Okay. And I know that my total cost of employing all of you is, for example, $50 or $100. Yeah. So $100 becomes the payroll cost. So $100, and then I estimate the work to be of $100. That's about $10,000, right? And then on top of it, I'm going to put other expenses, overheads. I'm going to put some contingency. I'm going to put some management effort. I'm going to put some profit on top of all of that. And then what price I get is going to be a fixed price. I can offer even that to the client. Yeah. So if you see, guys, in fixed price, a lot of risk comes on me. So I have estimated this work to be finished in 100 hours. And imagine if we get into a delay, right? If you get into a delay and 100 hours become, for example, 200 hours, then the client is not going to pay for 200 hours. They're going to pay for the fixed price which I gave them. In that case, most of the risk is going to fall on me, which is the service provider. All right. And other cases of time and material where frankly there's no risk on the vendor like you and me. Okay. Because we have just given bodies, we have just given people to the client. Whichever way they want to use them, they will use that, and they will pay for per hour basis. So they will use your expertise of setting up an agile team and leading them, and they're going to charge you on a per hour basis. Now, whether you do, if the project gets delayed, if there's a schedule slippage, scope change, anything can happen. But the risk is going to be on the client side. Because whatever the project gets delayed up with, I'm going to charge the client on a per hour basis. So the service providers are very typically happy with time and material. Client normally was never very happy, because when we give the time and material, we only give them delivery and output. We don't end up changing the very face of this. We end up changing. I'm sorry, not changes. Yeah, the changes which are going to come in a time and material. I'm not going to, offer any resistance. Whatever is the amount of change coming in, the client is going to make those changes. My team, which I've given, instead of 100 hours, they will end up doing 150 hours. I'm going to charge per hour basis. I'm good. So clients prefer fixed price proposals because if we need to complete the work, now whether it takes 100, 200, 300, 500 hours, I have given them a fixed price. So I'm supposed to complete this whole thing from beginning to end. Hence, fixed price is more risky for service providers. Hence, they prefer time and material. Clients prefer fixed price because then the risk is more on the service provider side. Okay, so it's a mutual contradiction, which is between the service provider and the clients. Nevertheless, the fact is that service providers are also clever. What they do is that if they give time and material, then I'm going to just give you guys to the client, and you're going to do only operational work. I'm not going to do any continuous improvement. I'm not going to bring in something new to the environment. I'm not going to bring new practices. I'm not going to bring any analytics. I'm not going to bring any, value additions, productivities, etc. So all that the client does not get in time and material. So it's a double play. And with this understanding, I would like to take you inside the contracting part. Okay. All right, here we go, guys. So I told you a little bit about the fixed price contracts. They have a pre-specified price, deadline, and specification which we will develop for the client. Okay, so we specify what all is going to happen in the project. Okay, what all changes are going to happen, how many hours are going to be done, and what is the fixed timeline when we should be able to complete this project. We give a project plan, we give a proposal, and we make it into a contract. And now if the project gets delayed, client is not at fault, so the service provider is at fault, and hence we have to complete the project for them. That's why, guys, typically, when only waterfall used to be the prime thing, okay, that time when the project used to get delayed by, let's say, one year, for example, so that entire cost of that additional work had to be on the service provider, like your Wipros and Tatas and Accentures, etc. And that's why they were forced to shift to agile methodology. Okay, it's as they say, mother is a necessity of all inventions. Yeah, so fixed price contracts are like that. Time and material, as you read here, the customer pays the supplier, like TCS, whatever, based on an hourly rate, right? And there's a third kind of contract type called target price contract. So target price contract contains a target for the time spent, a negotiated profit, and often a deadline. So I mean, this is pretty much not really popular at this point of time at all, but in the future perspective, you may have a target price contract, which means that the client will tell you the scope to be delivered, the timeline which the delivery has to happen. Okay, they will leave it up to you how much of time, team, skills, staffing, and effort you want to bring in for the same. How do you want to manage the project? They will be only focused on the target, which is more like an output based pricing. So they will tell you that, all right, we'll expect the output in 3 months, complete deliverable, every system is stable, development lifecycle complete, all the deliverables ready, and then they will negotiate for a price with you. All right, there are some other contract types. For example, cost plus. Cost plus contracts are where I know if I am employing the team of these 10 people to deliver a project in Agile, it will going to take a year. That's fine. I'm going to deliver a specific amount of scope, let's say 50 enhancements, for example, yeah, or 3 projects, for example. And with that, my total cost is, let's say, $100. So what I'm going to say is, all right, my cost is $100. Maybe let me put an additional fee of $20 on top of it, 20%, just like a profit. And then I'll quote the price of $120 to the client, right? Okay. Oh, by the way, all such projects which we are talking, guys, typically the price for these projects is generally about at least $1 to $2 million plus. Okay. Any kind of a development projects, transformation projects, or enhancements projects for which the clients need your expertise, and team size, etc. Typically, they have a large chunk of volume which needs to be delivered. And typically, a 10 to 15 member team employed for a year or 2 years with the client is going to fetch the service provider about $1 million plus. Yep. Okay, then there's something called agile fixed price contract. Yeah, and pretty much same to a fixed price contract. Okay, and then there are combinations. For example, I can possibly, we can have a fixed price contract for phase one. What is the phase one? Business analysis and designing. So we can have a fixed price for that, followed by a time and material. So pretty often, guys, this contract is quite popular. The fixed part, which is the critical part, to be honest, and business analysis is a critical part, followed by a high level design. Yeah, followed by a detailed design. If this is done well, the client knows that the rest of the things, to be done, like your building up the product in terms of coding, configuration, testing, they know that is going to be fine. Once the design is made well, the rest of the things turn out well, right? So what the client does is, since they want to avail the best of your skills, right? So what they will do is they will tell you to make the contract for the designing and business analysis on the fixed price. And after that, for all coding, testing, etc., they will like to put that on a time and material. Okay. Okay, not a bad a beginning. So let me see if there's any query. Okay, Savan has a query. Savan says, currently we are giving effort in man days to any new required change. For example, 100 man days, kind of thing. And now we deliver it in 30 days or 150. It's a different thing. So which category this falls under? Okay, great. So Savan, this falls in time and material. You know why? In time and material, there are only two things which are important for a client. As a service provider, you will say, guys, I estimated it's going to be 100 hours, okay, and I'm going to charge $10 an hour for this project, okay. So if it's $100 project, then it's about $1,000 project. Now, how did someone come to the $10 per hour price? Okay, now $10 is per hour, and you know what Savan has done is he's calculated the total cost of delivering this project. So Savan says, okay, you know what? I'm going to need a 5-people team. Fair enough. Each team works 10 hours a day. All right. So total 5 people work 50 hours in cumulative in a day. Perfect. And he thinks that it's going to take about, maybe 2 days to deliver this project. So 50 hours into 2 is 100 hours, right? That's how he came to a conclusion that based on the scope, development, effort of designing, testing, building, it's going to take about 100 hours. Fine. So someone knew that if he has to deliver that in 2 days, because that's the mandate from the client, and he has to deliver 100 hours, he must employ 5 people, part number 1. Okay. So what did Savan do? So Savan decided to take the cost of payroll, yeah, for these 10 people for those 2 days. So let's say, for example, my salary is, for example, a lakh a month, for example, right? There are 20 working days. So each working day, typically this means what? I'm being paid $5,000, right? Okay, so all 5 team members are also paid the same. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So so what Savan is going to do is he's going to accumulate his costs of delivering those 100 hours. He's going to pick up payroll first, then he's going to pick up any overheads, then he's going to pick up any other costs, etc. He's going to apply some contingency, some additional cost, and then on top of it he will apply maybe a 30-40% profit, and all put together he comes to a total price which he must get from the client. So then that's how he divides that total price by the number of hours. So that total price, I think, for example, came to $1,000. He said, hey, I got 100 hours to deliver, so my price must be $10 per hour. And that's where he ended up quoting the client that you want this is going to be 100 hours of fare and $10 per. So typically, let me tell you guys, for all outsourcing projects, which we we get outsourced from US or let's say Europe, etc. Typically, the price which client pays for, not a very senior role, let's say. So let's say, for example, agile coaches like you. So typically they pay about $30 an hour. So if Savan is going to work for 8 hours a day, typically Savan's employer is going to make about $240 for Savan. Yeah. And $240 is going to be approximately 20,000 bucks a month. So if Savan work 20 days, right? So 20,000 into 20 is 4 lakh rupees. So the billing for Savan is going to be 4 lakh rupees. And the likelihood that what kind of, just a very broad estimate, right? Likelihood is that the employer may give Savan, let's say about what, like maybe a lakh a month. Still, they're going to make about 300,000 Indian rupees as pure profit on Savan. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, guys, outsourcing is a profitable business for Indian companies, okay, or all Indian or multinational IT service providers, right? So, but of course, I mean, they are not incurring only that kind of a cost. If let's say 1 lakh is the payroll cost of Savan, then they obviously have to put some overheads, corporate overheads, let's say the employer for Savan, let's say Wipro, right, for example. So they're running a big company, so they have other overheads which they must charge from the billing of each person. Let's say they are about a lakh of rupees. Okay, still the total cost to the company is 2 lakh, but they're charging 4 lakhs. Yeah, so that's how it goes. All right, so Savan, I think this explanation should suffice. Yeah. Okay, cool. Back to the slide. Okay. So guys, when you're going to help design such contracts, okay, and you are not going to be the only people helping out. There will be obviously contract related skill sets. There will be commercial negotiator, and all those skill sets will be there. You will be with us because since you understand Agile the best, likely in that team, and hence they will take your help in terms of creating a contract like that. So first of all, guys, what you have to keep in mind, okay, as an Agile coach before helping in Agile contracts is you need to look at both the parties, what they need. So you need to look at the client and the other parties, your own company, yeah, for whom you are a service provider. So let's say Wipro. So you need to look at what the client needs and what are Wipro's, expectations as well. Because Wipro being who's employed you, you might like to keep their KPIs in mind as well. Okay, then you're going to look at the work, you're going to look at the scope, you look at the basic budget of the client, right? And then you have to design, and of course ITT teams will pretty much help you to see what is the scope, how many changes or enhancements will bring in terms of complexity, medium, simple, or more complex. Each type of complexity has a certain effort estimation which is there. So so your idea will be not be too much playing with the numbers. Your idea will be to check those requirements at a high level and just give a take help of IT teams to decide how complex the actual software development life cycle of those is going to be. Okay, so these are the high level parameters which will influence. Okay, now coming back. So guys, there are basically 3 different main objectives you need to keep in mind for any software development contract which you are going to help making it, right? Number 1 is to define the purpose of the project. So what is the vision of the project? That's the client is going to tell you. They want a certain transformation in the supply chain management. This means that they want the product movements, they want warehousing, they want certain things to be more efficient, and these discussions is something which is going to happen with the BA. So BA will discuss all that with the client, get the right requirements, and then you as an Agile coach will sit with the BA. And to be lucky, to be honest, if you are the BA as well, then it's fantastic. So you understand, what the purpose of the project is, what do the client needs as an output, how many functionalities are they want, what areas, process areas they want to change on, etc. So that's great. So then you need to obviously establish that how the project is to be, established and run. So you will create the solution framework. I mean, of course, the solution architect will create, but you will help him from an agile perspective. Yeah. And then you will define some risks, which will tell us that in case the project goes wrong, then what are the ramifications? Now, for years, we have done contracting in waterfall, right? And most of the waterfall contracts, guys, primarily focus on the third point. And what is the third point? This is the third point. That what may be the consequence of the project going wrong. They generally don't talk about, what exactly is the scope which we need to deliver in this project. That's point one. And second, how to deliver that scope. Okay. So in many cases, it is a functional specification which has the ownership of defining the scope of the project and shaping the software functionality, etc., etc. And when the functional specs fails to provide the level of transparency and detail required, then disagreement starts. So in waterfall, BA finds out the right requirements, put it into BRD. Then BRD is given to the IT teams so that they can write the functional specifications to begin with. Yeah. Okay. And then what happens is that when the functions guy is able to write functional specification, because functional specification will contain what is to be designed, how much is going to be done with configuration, how much is going to be checked with code, via coding, etc. So a lot in waterfall contracts depends on what does the design and functional specs look like. Okay. So that's like a little shortcoming because too much reliance is given on one point. Okay. So, essentially, guys, many waterfall contracts ignore the prime, necessity of what on a day-to-day basis is going to be the real-time effort in this project. So there are certain rules of engagement which need to be defined. And that is something which is pretty much available in the agile mode of life. Okay. So that's why, the relationship between waterfall and standard contracts is that waterfall ignores, the actual day to day, what is going to happen in the project. So why is that? Because it's not in the genes of waterfall contracts. Waterfall contracts generally tend to put a clear focus on, the designing and the development part. So they are able to give details only on that front. Even though we now know that you really get screwed in a project if you're not able to visualize that what's going to be a day-to-day kind of a effort, day-to-day delivery outcome, etc. For this particular project, and that's where your precision of pricing comes better, and that's exactly what happens in agile. Because waterfall is again 2 months of business analysis, 2 months of designing, 3 months of coding, 3 months of testing, and oh goodness me, all right, end of 12 months, fine, we'll deliver the project. Whereas agile breaks down the requirements into very, very small things, and hence they are able to estimate it on a very, very close to the ground level. That is why the precision of estimation for agile is way more than waterfall. Okay. All right. So as an example, the Scrum model lists a clear priority for defining each of the following aspects of the project. Okay. And this is what you use in the contracting framework. So for a contract, details pertaining to Agile project, what we do is we do look at three things. One is what are the key project roles, what are coming from the client, and what do we have to provide. Second thing is that in terms of likelihood of how many scrums will which may be required for this kind of a project, how many, and obviously how many sprints within each scrum, and then using story point estimation, I will be able to come to at least something close by in terms of estimation. So this means that we're going to use uh, uh, the real-time visibility and control of the project in the agile mode. So many times, guys, we almost have standard templates which just tell us that if a medium-sized agile projects, typically what are the with the effort estimates for the same. So using that, we design the course curriculum. Yeah. Now, this is waterfall model. All right, this is so another essential feature of many waterfall-based contracts is their approach to problems and failures during the development side of the story. In many cases, the contract reflects a key assumption of waterfall model that each phase of the project, should complete before starting on to the next phase. Okay. So now another, is point where I would like to mention some of the weaknesses of agile contracting. Typically, guys, in agile contracting, we keep a very key assumption that we'll finish one phase of the project and then we'll move into the other. Now we have to give it a timeline. So looking at the complexity of the changes, what we do is that we have a standard template which tell us that, okay, if it is a simple change, it's going to take 3 days. If it's a complex change, it's going to take 7 days. To use those kind of benchmarks, and then we can end up creating an estimation. Now, obviously, with completely forgetting that you have estimated 3 days for the understanding the change, maybe another 3 to 4 days for writing the spec. So all in all, in 7 to 8 days, one particular requirement of medium complexity can be prepared. Now assume that requirement starts changing. So what has happened is that you have built a good standard framework for waterfall. Unfortunately, you could not assess and quantify the if something may go wrong. And why you couldn't do that? Because you're doing block by block. You're estimating the waterfall project in terms of blocks. First block, design, second, development, third, testing, etc. But in agile contracting, you are able to look deeper and better. That's why you're able to give a more cost optimum price to the clients. Because to be honest, in Scrum teams, there's hardly any wastage. Okay, any questions? Oh, that's great. Okay, now there's a good difference between waterfall and agile contracts. Yeah. So, and to be honest, guys, I think we learned a lot uh, about agile methodology by comparing it with waterfall. So it helped us to give very clear differentiators between the two. Just like that, I'm going to use same approach in terms of making a clarity on how the agile contracts look like. Okay, now waterfall contracts. If the service provider, that's Wipro, conforms with the sequential approach of waterfall model, then potentially the likely possibility of failures can be avoided. Right? This is waterfall contract for you. What does Agile say? Agile says, guys, we must expect some failures in software development lifecycle. Okay, and especially if the project is or the scope is a bit uncertain, the likelihood that there will be challenges in SDLC must be taken as a guarantee that yes, there will be failures. So we have to rework and defect manage and etc. etc. Yeah, that's why the agile contracts do take into consideration some percentage of failures as well. So basically, what I'm trying to say, all I'm trying to say is that agile has made its contracts flexible. Yeah, and flexibility is the good part about it. because honestly, the flexibility is not only for the service provider, it's also for the client. So I might say that, okay, that way both gets helped. So it's imperative that more flexibility in the contracts will be helpful, which can have the accommodation of some amount of failures, etc., etc. Okay, that's fine. That's just a high detailed level of the first point on. Okay. So now we are talking more sense. Limitation of traditional contracts. So traditional contracts are our waterfall contracts. So guys, why it becomes important for me to keep going back to the history is because some of the best things we always learn from what has happened in the past, and waterfall has happened in the past and is still happening. Yeah. So the shortcomings, how can humans improve? Humans look at the shortcomings which they experienced in the past, and we learn from that experience, and that's where we say, okay, those shortcomings will not be repeated in the future now, right? And then we design some process, we design some caretaking, some risk mitigations and some risk avoidance and all that stuff, so that what we did in the past we shouldn't do it in the future, right? And that's exactly how we learned from traditional contracts to ensure that how our agile contract should look different. So typically, guys, traditionally what we have been doing is we never used to talk on continuous improvements. Yeah, because we didn't ourselves have a lot of tools and etc. or the understanding of the client domain to effectively give continuous improvement. So we typically, the negative part of the traditional contract has been that there's obvious lack of trust between the two party, which is the client and service provider. Yeah. So if we give a very deep research solution, then typically in traditional contracts, it starts driving additional and unnecessarily, kind of complications. So what we do is we said, hey, these are very limitation. The client, the limitations in these kind of contracts are enormous. So we must shift to the agile contracting. Okay. Key principle of agile contracting: output is monetized, not effort. So you may employ 10,000 people to deliver a change or a project. Frankly, I don't care. Why? Because agile contracting, is done more on an output level. So, as service providers, we need to tell the client that yes, we are planning to deliver you, uh, you know, 2 or 3 kind of artifacts on a monthly basis. Okay. And what are these artifacts? Nothing but just the definition of done, which means whatever changes we pick up, we'll accomplish them in sprints. This is our sprint plan, and this is done. So these kind of thought processes encourage even the Scrum team to deliver some value as well to the client. So the point here is that we since Agile intends to create value, right? And that's why the output part is monetized and not effort. Okay. In Agile, you have understood now very well, right? It's totally based on change. Hence, in Agile contracting, we typically tend to include a mechanism to update scope as required without much to worry upon, on the scope creep or other things. Yeah, because even if scope creep comes, what will happen? The requirements will increase, and with every increase, then of course, we can deliver them as well. Okay, so was of course reward the vendors, share the benefits with the service providers, etc., etc. Okay, so now, as just like any other things in this Bible of Agile, there are principles, of Agile contracting as well. One, there has to be an implicit trust on both sides of the party. Okay, that's the client and service provider. Second, we need to focus on vision in terms of describing and detailing the scope. We don't have to dwell on the process part. So when we talk scope, I think typically we need to talk what is the vision of this kind of a agile exercise that we are going to do in software development lifecycle. What will we get at the end of it? It's going to be what's the likely output or the value output that the client needs. This is possible in agile contract. And then agile demands regular feedbacks because they can't play the game without it, right? Because it's all output based, incremental, incremental uh, developments, and definition of done for the products. Yeah. So agile demands regular feedback because without that, the agile, the whole project will stop because it's completely based on feedback, from the user, and of course, incremental discussions to how to reshape the product further and further. Yeah. So in agile contracting, these kind of mechanisms are very important. So trust is important, feedback is important. You need to focus on the value part and the vision part, so that you can clearly specify what is to be done in this particular agile project, etc. All right, and some of the rules of the game has to be established. Prerequisites for setting up agile contracts. Okay, maybe you might like 30 seconds to read this slide. Okay, 3 key goals which you will install in contracts. The purpose of the legal contract has to be satisfied, which means, guys, whatever customer needs, we will give him that. Number one. Second, the speed to market has to be guaranteed. Okay, so since we are stepping into the agile contracting, then obviously, guys, the speed to market has to be defined up. Okay, and the third part is ability to maneuver direction without impacting cost. So this means, since agile is flexible, hence this will be an important clause in the agile contract that if the service provider team wants to change its direction in terms of the product development, it can do it. It means the client will not unnecessarily keep picking the service provider up to say that the direction is not correct and the scope is not being visualized correct, etc., etc. Okay, when you suggest your thought process for the agile projects, for contracting, of course, remember one of the most key things is your project roles in the Scrum model. Okay, so product owner is the most important. Scrum master, likely you're going to be the Scrum master yourself, and then there's going to be a development team. Okay, so these minimum roles are mandatory for any agile contracting and hence project. So again, what are we are trying to say? We are trying to say that when we do a time and material contract on the agile with the client, we always ensure that the team is getting the right infrastructure to work on with as well. And who will provide all that? Product owner. So product owner, being the single point of contact from the client side, will be responsible for providing the infrastructure to make sure that all the requirements are there and they are articulated very well to our BD, to our business development people, so that they can create the right commercial valuation of this contract as well. Okay, so you as a agile coach need to check that the product owner role is there and it is fully detailed in the contract. Okay, this is to avoid a possible situation where the client nominates a product owner, but frankly, he or she is just not keen to work with our team. Okay, so ensure that, guys, that these key features of this roles are there in the contract. What your contract should say, or in fact, you should provide this draft to the contracting team that, guys, we need number one, a product owner from the client side, loud and clear. Second, what are going to be the 5 6 key KPIs for this product owner in your agile contracting project, right? So he should be able to do all this. Okay, so this should get into the contract. Okay, certain pointers you must understand for agile, for the agile contracting design. So as it says, guys, very clearly, the second box, contract should set out the key responsibility of the product owner. So he's on the client side. He will not going to be reporting to anybody else. So this means his deliverables output should be listed in the in the contract. Basically, everybody in this world knows what a product owner does, but if the same thing is clearly specified in the contract, it's better. Okay. All right. These pointers are not too bad. Then we come down to the development team. So remember, guys, if you ask me just off the hand, Mukhraj, what are the three most important roles to drive a agile project? I will say product owner number one, scrum master number two, and agile team number three. Okay. So because these, if any project has these roles, at least the agility can be guaranteed. Okay. So now when you're setting up the development team for this, let's say any upcoming project, okay, then you have to obviously pick and choose to see that the teams are self-organized, they are cross-functional, they are multi-skilled, they include all the skill set needed for a agile requirement, which includes developers, tester, designers, etc., etc. Okay, so three things, guys. Okay, product owner, scrum master, and agile team. These three guys, three roles. What are they going to do? What are their roles and responsibilities? What are the outcomes, or deliverables expected from these three? You need to just put that kind of understanding in the contract. Okay, if any questions, then please ask me. I'll just check if you guys have any questions. Okay, no questions till now. And we go to screen share. Or not screen share. Okay. Okay, still at development team. All right. Again, guys, continuing with the pointers you have to understand for agile contract designing. So we were talking that contract should have the details of the key skills. All right. So please list out the key skills and please list out the individuals which you can dedicate to this project, for example. Right. Second thing, please ensure that your team members are cross-functional certified, which means they can do multitasking within the same technology. Okay, by and large, this is fine. I mean, the third point is fine, guys. The customer, checks the profile CVs of these agile team that you are suggesting, approves them, and then, you only after that the project starts. This we have seen yesterday. Okay. The following scenarios may be useful when you, as an agile coach, may participate in contract formation. Number one, the contract does not have any scrum master role at all. Number two, the scrum master being a member of service providers or the client teams. And the third thing is that the nominated scrum master being neither from service provider nor from the customer team, but rather from a third party. So I'm giving you multiple scenario, guys. These scenarios will be there in your contract, which you will help to design. Okay, so multiple scenarios, fine. So what I'm preparing you for, if tomorrow any of such scenarios comes in front of your company, who's going to write a contract for fulfilling these obligations of theirs, then they will probably seek your help. Okay, some key aspect worth remembering. If the client has the right person enabled with precise, efficiencies to churn this project churn the performance as a scrum master, that's excellent. Okay, and if the service provider has right persons enabled with precise proficiency to bring this delivery to this project, so be it. So typically the clients are not very, very choosy. So they tell you that if you, if they have the right people, they'll bring it over. They won't charge, you can't charge for them. If they don't have any people, they'll give you at least heads up 20 days back, 30 days back, saying that, we have most of the skills are there, but we need to pick up few more skills. Yeah. So, and the life continues. Okay. So, all right. So this is fine. Typically, guys, product owner definitely comes from the client side. You won't have to pitch in yours. Second, business analysts may come from the client side, so you don't have to get into that. And then the third point is that uh, in case we don't have any skills, and then we generally put into the contract what the client is proposing. Okay. All right. Where does it all start from? Of course, the product vision. Ideally, guys, the product vision statement has to be configured or conceived or made before the contract negotiations. It's obviously right, because when the client will tell you their product vision, then you can take some key decision on, what kind of a work in progress kind of solution has to be built into the contract, right? So right now, guys, everything is about contract. We are not thinking anything else, right? So okay, so keep your product vision strong. That's part one. Second things to be addressed is, guys, which is the best place for a product vision to be included? Okay. Now, why we are discussing this? Because at the time of contract formation, maybe we do not yet have a product vision, but that doesn't mean that we can't proceed with the SOW. Okay. So guys, if you see the headers very clearly, the headings of the slide. So now what heading we are doing is what issues to address in the contract from product backlog perspective. Okay. And if you want to see this, okay, so contract formation, etc. Okay. So guys, we were discussing that it's possible that at the time of contract formation, your product vision is not yet there. It's all right. You can proceed with the contract and then include the product vision to the contract as an addendum. Okay. So like the last point was, guys, key issues. Yeah, this one is from a product backlog perspective. So you know that every product, every agile cycle obviously has a product backlog, right? That's the changes which come from the client, and the client business, and they keep getting parked up and up and up till the time some kind of a real continuous delivery fulfills that obligation. So all right, so initial product backlog could be developed in parallel with the negotiation of the contract. So obviously, as the contract has nothing to do with the number of changes which are there in the product backlog. Okay, the other part is that the contract will need to specify how the vanilla version of the vanilla version, how it will be developed. Yeah. So guys, what is a contract? Tell me. It's a blank open territory. That time you don't have any clue, except that you have some vision of the high level solution design. So based on that, you have to now proceed into the contract. So if you have, all the typical customization numbers, etc., then it can help you to form the contract, which will be general plus specific. But if you don't have a lot of details, about what specific configuration coding has to be done and all that, then you can simply use the, vanilla version of the technology. Okay, guys, I'm expecting you to please read this. Yeah, because if you read it slowly at your end, I think it will also be very useful. Okay. Okay. Duration, specification of duration in the contract is very important, because guys, it's at the party's discretion. When you say parties, that's your Wipro and the client. It's at their discretion to choose the duration of the sprints that will be suitable to the project. Generally, it kept at 2 to 4 weeks. That's fine. But how many sprints have to be done like that, accumulating into maybe some, you know, something more than that as well. So to avoid any delays, typically the duration is more of, frankly, it's just about, the line in the sand kind of thing, which means that, even if uh, which means that, as a fundamental principle, this should not change. Okay, the the duration principle should stay, even if the client is if the project is running behind schedule. Oops, wait. I'm sorry, why am I missing this slide? Yeah, okay. Oh yeah, this is on. So guys, yesterday who somebody was telling me, that it's very important for the contract to specify the agreed duration for each sprint. See, this is a bottom-up story, guys, in Agile. Okay, because you're going to be working day in day out, and actually in the sprints. Sprints will collapse into a Scrum, and Scrum will move into Scrum. Uh, what should I say? Scrum. Uh, the definition of contract has to originate primarily from Scrum. Okay, because this whole contract is only about Scrum. So the Scrum way of life, the Scrum artifacts, the Scrum deliverables, the Scrum, how we do work in Scrum, what will be a day in the life of a Scrum, delivery, what are the different roles to be employed, when they are to be employed, in terms of sometimes there'll be lean skills, sometimes there'll be much in demand because of the dynamic nature of the client product. Okay. Um, All right. So duration of sprints can't be increased, guys, or can't be extended. Cardinal rule. Okay. All this has to get into your contract. So, guys, what are we talking? What we are talking is what we have learned as an agile SME till yesterday, for example. A lot of those similar, things will come into the contract as a pointer, because eventually contract is a legal document. So from a legal document perspective, we need to make it enriched enough. All right, hang on, where are we? Guys, any questions till now? Okay. Savan says, can Agile coach be from a third party? Well. My answer would tend to be no, Savan, because there's a client and then there's a Wipro. So now you're asking me that can the Agile coach be from a third party consultancy house, for example? Uh, yes and no. I mean, of course, if the client is recommending that they would like to keep some XYZ, which is coming from a third party, uh, yeah, I think that it may work that way as well. So yes, Agile coach can be from a third party. And sometimes the client, why they will do it? Because many places, guys, which I went globally to assess the, I kind of assess the positive impact of Agile. Yeah. So I've realized that the client can recommend a very highly specialized Agile coach from a third party system, which is fine. Because see, what Agile coach has to do? Agile coach has to make sure that Agile process is followed. He has to make sure that Agile, guidelines and protocols and principles are met. So frankly, yeah, it can be from client side, it can be from a service provider side, but it can be from a third party. And Savan, I think why you got it is also, very honestly, it's like this. Uh, if your client is employing, he has a third party boutique kind of a consultancy firm in his landscape, right? Just to help on a certain specific configuration. Yep, it can be a reason why Agile Coach came from there. Second part of the story. Okay, just give me a minute. Okay, sorry. One more reason, Savan, why the Agile Coach can be from a third party is if the number of changes which are coming in largely pertains to the software which is being provided by the third party system. So it's okay, there's a client and then there's a Wipro from where you are there, right? But then frankly, you are more of a build and test people. That's fine. The technology on which you are working is not too critically important. Fair enough. But the software which is actually the key here comes from a third party system, right? So in that case, and there could be reasons why this could be important. So tomorrow, let's say you're working in a, let's say, Oracle ecosystem, right? So you have a client and you are Wipro, okay, but the product being talked about in terms of changes and all that stuff is Oracle. So obviously Oracle becomes the third party system here, right? So Oracle as a vendor will also send its specialists. And if the main changes, the development part is largely going to happen in Oracle, it's possible that the Agile coach can come from Oracle. That's fine. Yeah. So, guys, any amount of flexibility can happen in an Agile contract. So we were on the discussion before Savan asked this question is that what are the typical roles which can come from the client itself, from us, or for somebody else. Even though you may like to set this contract up, but you also have to see that if in a contract it's the client people plus it's the service provider people, which is you, plus there are multiple other vendors, then it's going to be like a really challenging Agile environment to work in. Okay, so because there are 3 4 5 different parties involved in this kind of a project, then the amount of dynamic collaboration goes into a big question mark. Okay, so yeah. Okay. Hey guys, I wanted to tell you one thing. Today our class is going to be till 6 p.m. Okay. And to be very honest with you, it's a very important festival of Maharashtra, in Mumbai especially. It's called Ganpati Puja. So, So I'm hosting that thing at home. So I would like to break, 1 hour early so that, it's when the guests come in, etc. So, I'm able to care for that. Right. So we will do 3 to 6 p.m. today. So for that, what we're gonna do is let's take about a 10-15 minutes break now. Come back and then we'll continue for another about an hour plus so as to finish it by 6 p.m. So our target is to complete agile contracting today. Okay. So fine, guys. So let's take a break now. About 15 minutes outer limit is fine. We need to come back so that we are able to complete the topic. Yep. Hey guys, shall we be back? Okay, so let's continue with this. Hey guys, is this going okay? Or, I mean, any fundamental query you may have on contracting? I mean, of course, we have yet, a couple of good understandings are yet to come to you. But are you getting the fundamental idea of a contract framework? Okay, we are not discussing the framework. We are just discussing what needs to be important pointers in the contract. Are you kind of getting it all right? Is the discussion amenable to you? So let me know, guys, if you have any specific feedback, because this is a topic which is a bit different from the usual agile methodology or process topic, etc. Hence, I'm asking you if you're kind of okay, then we can continue ahead. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's great. Thanks, three of you. So let's go ahead. Okay, so what are we doing? Again, just a refresh. We are just trying to point out what are the key critical, significantly important, whatever you want to call them, things which must be in the contract. Okay, why we can't ignore them? Because if they are not in the contract, they will eventually come back. The absence of which will be exploited or leveraged upon by the client, and hence you as a service provider could be in trouble. So we must keep certain key things in mind, before what, so that we go by the contract. So basically, when we say key things, we are typically looking at, you know, um, certain pointers like, for example, the duration of the contract, initial product backlog, in terms of what the Scrum Master role is going to be, for example, what the product vision is going to be. So all this has to be listed in the contract, so that tomorrow the actual agile working is based on this only. Okay. Similarly, that the product owner, which must come from the client, or probably from a third party, or probably from no, I mean, product owner will come from the client only. But for example, Scrum Master can come from anywhere and all that. That's fine. But it should be there in the contract. Yeah. So that kind of thing. Okay. Very good. So let's go to our slide. Yeah. Here. Okay. Now, important point. Is compliance with the sprint process binding? Yeah. So it's a question which you probably you have to discuss with the client, that do they want that the contract and actual delivery should run exactly according to the sprint process? Likely, I suggest the answer is going to be yes from the client side. Yeah. In that case, what's going to happen is that you must ensure that these following things are there in the contract. First, please ensure that the prioritization mechanism is there, which means you need to put it in the contract that the role of the product owner in terms of helping to prioritize the backlog items is there. Okay, so that the development teams from a service provider side, let's call it Wipro, may be able to identify how many of high priority items, determined by the product owner, must be developed firsthand during current sprint. Okay, so if you see, this is like a very, very, very nice storylining. What are we talking that must be in the contract? All that what you've learned till yesterday, what must be part of sprint, what must be part of Scrum, what must be the roles which should be. So all the essentialities, of this, whether from a process perspective, people perspective, skill perspective, or methodology perspective, all that needs to be there in the contract. Why? Because if they want you to execute Agile for them or Scrum, then they need to participate as well. The process has to be there. So you're just ensuring that all those important things are there in the contract, so that they are there in the delivery on the ground as well, so that you can coolly do your job. That's all. Okay, there's definition of done, kind of a discussion. So we'll probably do this class discussion maybe a little later. I want to tell you something, guys. Yeah. Okay. You remember we talked about this, right? The minimum viable product and the definition of done, etc. So I just created a slide to say, hey, when we say that the definition of done has been achieved in my agile or let's say in my sprint, what is the meaning of that? It obviously means that the definition of done, which means when as a service provider I say that this particular change has been done. Okay, what does that mean? Fundamentally, guys, it means that it has crossed most of the exit criterias, which was there laid out in the contract, which means that if there are four things to be overcome, if your minimal viable product or your functionality or your final deliverable has been able to overcome those four things, we'll say that it is done. Now, what are those few acceptance or exit criterias? Very simple. Number one, obviously, all the testing must be cleared. So, all functional testing, unit testings, performance testings, and then especially the user acceptance testing. So, all those tests, your product has passed. That's acceptance criteria number one. Second, all the code which had to be written for the things has been reviewed. It is found to be right. Third, all the necessary coding standards which had to be followed have been followed, and hence the functionality which is developed or the product which is developed if all is obviously of a great quality. Okay, and last is, and the last one is that all the necessary documentation has been completed. Yeah, so keep this broad things in mind, guys. Oh, sorry. Hey, where did you get missed? Sorry, guys, the slide got tuned out. Uh, Development, contracting, product vision, definition of done. Yeah, here we are. Sorry. Um, yeah. So, okay. So these are the few pointers, guys, which you should know from a definition of done perspective. Okay. Now, let's not probably make it a class discussion for now, but let me just take you through these sliders. So, guys, definition of done ideally is to be developed in parallel with the negotiation of the contract. Okay, so you make a contract for the process, rules, methodologies, deliverables, outcomes, acceptance criteria, all that is good. But remember, one fundamental huge thing for a contract is what is the definition of done as understood between you and the client, and that is something which must come into the contract as well. Now, how to apply definition of done? The contract should provide that during each sprint planning meeting, okay, sprint planning, the joint wisdom of product owner and development team should decide what, how the definition done is going to be applied on the items which are going to be developed during that sprint. So in that sprint, you have four changes. Okay. Now you need to apply the definition of done on all those four changes and give it an outcome to say, okay, if we are doing this functionality, the outcome is number one, that the user will be able to have the user will be able to have that, remember that finance pop-up thing on his screen, so that he can take a comfortable decision whether to dispatch any more quantity to the customer, yes or no. Yeah. Second change which you are doing in this contract, it's like a reporting requirement. So what is definition of done? The definition of done for the second change is that the global report encompassing the the sale for products which have been, let's say, crossed $1 million in any particular month will be displayed along with the details of the customer, along with the details of his or her outstanding, along with the kind of key products which have been the main pickup products for that customer in that particular $1 million deal. Very simple example. What I'm saying is that you need to apply the definition of done. Now see what is so beautiful about definition of done definition. I'm sorry, definition of done, that's all. The beautiful things about is it gives you a complete visualization what the end product should look like. And honestly, guys, remember, you are the agile coach, right? You need to give such pointers to your team. So frankly, to be very honest with you, if you want me to be very frank, typically the role of agile coach is not like a it is a critical role, but it's not that it's like, like a 12-hour shift every day. Why? Because agile coach role is more of a guidance. He or she is giving more like a supervision. About what? About these such kind of key things. Things like, is the agile process being followed? If not, where is the gap? Second, do we have the right agile skills in the team? If not, where we have the gap, and if we don't fulfill that gap, how it will impact our delivery. Third thing, are we applying the definition of done? If we are applying definition of done to each deliverable, what it should be like, which means that if I say this product is complete, what is the comprehensive definition of completedness for that product? For example, I just took example of two products, right? One is that global report, another is that, a finance pop-up that you needed to validate the financial outstanding of a customer, right? So who's going to decide this definition of done? The product owner and your development team. Yeah. So product owner will validate the definition of done from business perspective. Development team will validate the definition of done from technical perspective. Both things meet together, good to go. Yes, you need to facilitate that, guys. That is why, you have to, your antennas, your eyes and ears should be completely open to all these fundamental points to say that, are these being done in the project? If they are not, it's your job to get them done. Yeah. So the contract should provide that the scrum master should be responsible for ensuring that all items presented by the development team at the sprint review meet have been completed in accordance with definition of done. And that's your role now. So scrum master is responsible for ensuring that definition of done has been completed for each of the functionalities, each of the products which are, delivered in this particular sprint. So remember, guys, eventual accountability is yours. And that's why you need to be cautious. Okay. Now, as we are discussing the contract framework, and again it is going back into the deep dives of Agile itself, let's have a little bit different viewpoint. Let's have a view on pricing now. Yeah. So Agile has come in lately, and the pricing models are still in the state of flux, to be honest, because Agile has come just about like what, 2 years back. Yeah. So pricing is not it's, I would say, what should I say? It's not much evolved yet. Okay. So there's no hard and fast rules still to put to put a proper pricing on the agile models. But we will discuss that what are the likelihoods that the way it can be priced. So guys, most of the controversies are currently on the pricing model. Okay. So let's pay attention here so that you are not part of that controversy. Okay. Hey, why don't I invite you to think about pricing from different perspectives? Number one, let's think from client perspective. Now, what does the client need? They need good work to be done. Okay. They need that work to be at a fixed price so that, it is not negotiable. Once you say $100,000, client okays $100,000, then whether the earth turns this way or that way, within 1,000, $100,000, the service provider should be able to complete all deliverables. Okay. And as you see, guys, what I've written there, fixed price contract is acceptable, more acceptable to client, because then obviously the service provider is someone who's carrying most of the risk. Okay. So that is the client viewpoint. Now let's think from a service provider perspective. Service provider like Wipro would like client to share the risk associated with agile model. So agile is dynamic, right? I mean, for heaven's sake, yes, God damn it, it's very dynamic. I mean, the kind of the way the requirements change, the way scope keeps creeping up and down, the way business guys keep coming back and keep justifying that why the requirements are changing again and again. And for heaven's sake, even the agile framework can't help us, because it is based on the fundamental fact that any amount of changes is welcome in agile. Any amount of incremental model is welcome in agile. Any kind of flexibility is welcome in agile. So you can't even say no to business, obviously. Yeah. So the fact is, guys, so what can you do as a service provider? As Wipro, all you will say is, okay, Mr. Client, let's create a model of contracting where you equally share some part of our risks as well, right? And hence, you would want the model to be on a time and material or per hour basis. So you will say, fine, I'll give you 5 agile coaches. All right. Their price is, let's say, $10 per hour. They will work 9 hours a day. So you can pay me, $90 into 5, $450 per day for these 5 good people. You're going to make them work for 2 months? Fine. You're going to make them work for 6 months? Fine. I'll just send you an invoice at the end of the month. So obviously, guys, Wipro would definitely want this contract to be on a time and material basis. Yeah. Okay. Now I want you to very clearly understand why a client would like to have a fixed price. So from the client's perspective, guys, one of the major concerns for any software project is cost, right? I mean, it has always been cost. What now? It always has been cost. So many customers are apprehensive to approve the agile commercial construct, because think from a customer perspective. They also know that the agile project may go on an indefinite amount of iterations, right? So frankly, this will lead to a straight cost escalation. So first and foremost, clients, business people or procurement people are very scared of agile contracting. First and foremost. That's why they don't figure out. I mean, they always keep looking for less risky models which don't lead to cost escalations. Yeah. Now these are the things from a client perspective. Now I'll give you some. I'm not going to like favoring. I'm not going to be favoring any particular model too much, but I'm just going to tell you why. A pricing model based solely on time and material will drive the right behavior from both the parties. Both parties means client and Wipro. How? It's obvious that a time and material pricing model can be challenging for the service provider to use with respect to realistic estimates and not end up deviating from it. That's fine. But all of these issues need to be taken into account when the discussion on which commercial construct to be used is going on to determine the pricing model, right? So if you see here now, in time and material, there are roles and responsibilities which are divided. Fine. The client is going to contribute 6 people, service provider is going to contribute 10 people, right? The client guys are going to do specific deliverables and outcomes, and the rest of everything will be done by the service provider people. Okay. So it is just that the client will probably ensure that the per hour rate is heavily negotiated so that they can buy the services at a cheaper price. But otherwise, I have all reasons to believe that if it is a time and material, then no one, either client or service providers, don't get overwhelmingly, kind of bossy on each other. Okay, because it's a very balanced model. The risks are, the roles are divided, the work efforts are divided, deliverables are divided, and the client is, simply has to pay for the kind of, for the services of people that they have employed from the service provider side. Okay. Now, let me take you into some of the scenarios within fixed price model. So, I mean, of course, clients were also clever, so were the service providers as well. So we bought out multiple, different scenarios which can be pertaining to the as the situation requires. One is called fixed price per iteration, which means every iteration that we will do with the client on a particular, changes which we have to do for an area, we will do it for a fixed price. But then the buck stops there, which means we won't do it for all iterations or all sprint cycles. We'll do it probably sprint wise. So we are developing one sprint. Okay, it's going to take about 3 weeks or 2 weeks. We're going to employ, let's say 10 people into it. They are going to dedicate their effort into it, but that's the only part we are doing fixed price. Then we will get into the new sprint. Then we will check out what are the different services or the deliverables or the changes required for the second sprint. Looking at the complexity and criticality of that, we will give you a fresh fixed price. So sprint to sprint, we will change our pricing. Okay. Second point, which is also a fixed price scenario, is fixed price per user story. Yeah. So you say that, all right, we'll charge you a fixed price per user story. So client says, fine, man. I mean, we have this. Uh, we have 10 user stories coming up in this sprint. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll assess and analyze the user stories, and we will check that how much effort is going to need, and then based on that we'll design the sprint, and based on the effort skills that we need to deliver that sprint, in which let's say there are 10 user stories. So if the total amount effort, cost, etc., that we need to spend to deliver that sprint is, let's say, $100, and there are 10 user stories. Okay, so we'll generalize and with a price of $10 per user story. Yeah, but of course, guys, what's important is that the IT team should be able to thoroughly investigate by doing a very high level, playing the poker thing, to see what is the effort estimate which is going to get into this development of these user stories, and accordingly develop what is the total cost for that. And then it's all simple. You get the total cost on your side as a service provider. You divide that by number of user stories, you'll get price per user story. You divide that by number of iterations, you get price per iteration. You divide that amount by a total number of sprints, you get fixed price per sprint, right? So this is how one large scenarios can exist. Okay. See, guys, I will not send you, like unarmed into the battlefield. So I need to prepare you, to tell you what are the actual issues in pricing which come in. And as an agile SME, how you can help to mitigate those issues or risks. Yeah. One of the key issues, guys, for service provider like Wipro in agreeing a pricing model is revenue recognition. Okay. Now, if you look at waterfall, you first define, then you build, and then you release, right? Your risk is running from beginning to end. Why? Because the risk is throughout the product life cycle. Since your product life cycle is going from define to build to test to release, risk is all across the road. Now let's look at an agile. In agile, you run sprints, right? So your first sprint says define, build, release, done. Then the risk is only from that, for that small 2-week cycle where you have run one sprint, because with every sprint everything finishes, right? Whatever changes you got to do in the system, you're able to do that very well by the end of the sprint, so you're good to go, right? So if you see, the quantum of risks for agile is way less than waterfall. So under the conventional waterfall contract, the service provider may be able to recognize the full contract price and revenue, right? Whereas in sprints, the service provider will be entitled to recognize the charges that the customer is contractually required to pay. So let's say waterfall contract, right? You said, okay, it's a fixed price contract. Fine. How much? $5 million. Okay, cool. So let's be the accounting system of the service provider will be able to recognize that we have won a $5 million deal. And as will the milestone payments, the payment from the customer keep coming by, the payments are revenue recognized. So all that goes straight into the profit and loss and balance sheet or whatever of the service provider. But unfortunately, in agile contract, the service provider may only be entitled to recognize the charges that the customer is contractually required to pay. So what is that? You said, okay, I've done a fixed price contract per sprint cycle with the client. Okay, how much is that? It's about, let's say, $10,000 per sprint cycle. Fine. So guys, when you run into sprints, whether your sprint goes up and down, whether it goes through, it doesn't go through, whether it passes or fails, the fact is that whether you might be able to devote a lot of extra effort to make that sprint come through well, but the fact is, if the customer is obliged to pay 10K, it's only going to pay 10K. Okay, so how to mitigate these issues? Yeah, so we need to be transparent about the pricing guys in the contract, which means an explanation of the pricing mechanism has to be put in. Okay, milestones have to be made clear, that when shall the service provider send the invoice to the client, who will bear the cost of items which have been left incomplete during iteration. So let's say, we are a bunch of team of agile people, right? So we are doing certain development, and during the midweek, almost like 3 days before we had to do a go live, the customer came back and changed the business requirements. So we saw that it's impossible to complete all the changes within the defined sprint cycle. So what we did, instead of 10, we did 7. We dropped 3. Those 3 came and went back into the product backlog. So we did only 7 changes. Yeah. So the point is that the other 3 things are half baked. We created some, because we had a user story. Based on that, we created certain prototype and functionality. But what suddenly, customer came and said, guys, you know what, we have to change the requirement. So the whole thing got reshaped, right? So in that case, what happened is that that requirement couldn't be done. But as a service provider, I did put effort on that, right? But it's half baked. So client is not going to pay for it either. So the point here is, guys, who is going to bear the cost of that particular iteration? Okay. Third point is, the client gave me a contract. It defined a certain scope in it. Fine. I mobilized a team and I started, doing those sprint cycles. And certainly after doing one sprint, I realized the customer has dramatically reduced the scope. Yeah. So now if the customer has reduced the scope, for heaven's sake, man, who is going to bear that now? So he reduced the scope. What should I do is, I should demobilize the team. I think I can do that. But the fact is that, the originally agreed contract was for a fixed scope, and hence I gave a fixed price. Now the scope has reduced. What happens to my price? Do I get paid the same price which I quoted in the contract? Or the customer might say, hey, buddy, I have reduced the scope now. So obviously your effort should go down, and hence your price should also go down. So who's responsible in this case? So these are the likely issues of pricing, guys, which we encounter during our contract and hands-on delivery. Okay, let me just check if there's any query. Oh, not yet. Okay. All right. Now, key issues to be addressed in the contract. By the way, guys, this is a major challenge called termination. So let's say we entered into a contract with the client, it's a 1-year contract, and we are doing developments and sprint cycles, etc. And suddenly after 4 months, either of the two parties says, hey, I want to terminate the contract. All right. So in that kind of a scenario, right, or how should we deal with it? So first and foremost, the contract should be enabled to deal with the termination. Yeah, so that no party gets hurt or gets a penalty or a damage, or in the win spirit of the both client and the service provider, we have to maintain a certain clause in the contract. Okay. Now, it is likely that customer may insist on having a right to terminate after each iteration. Because customer may think like that. You know what? Mukhraj and his team are here to the agile developments, but I don't know their credentials very strongly. So, maybe they so they may they may like to terminate, because if the performance is not too good, they may like to just terminate the contract. But isn't that like too flexible? Think about it. Guys, just give me a sec here. Just give me a sec. Right. All right. So, sorry guys, I got a call somewhere. Okay. Okay. So, coming back here, so the client would like to maintain a huge amount of flexibility for termination, right? Now, a client is a client. If they are insisting on a termination clause, which is very, very flexible, I think we need to consider about that. Okay. So that's another point which we need to keep in mind now. Third thing, client may not really want to let service provider, this kind of any kind of a flexibility, to be honest, because they may not like to enable the service provider to the extent that it can walk away even in between of a project. And that's how, due to point three, the clients get very aggressive during contract negotiation, and that's why they insist on point two. So it's, like sometimes it gets into a tussle during contract formation that, who does the head belong to, you or me? So during that constant tussle, what happens is, unfortunately, some part of the, spirit of contract goes away, and then, we end up getting, clauses like number two and number three, and so on and on. Hence, what should we do? The contract should also include a standard right to terminate, whether immediately or with the lead time. And if it is immediate, then the party which is terminating the contract should be able to provide, is liable for damages. I mean, they are liable to pay for the damages with the other person is going through. So let's say Wipro terminates a contract with a client, in between. Now remember, the client put up the infrastructure, the client dedicated their SMEs, the client made a commitment to its business to deliver the changes in the system, and suddenly, the Mr. Service provider is walking off. So this means that the service provider should be, made liable to pay for the damages, a certain X amount of money. Okay. And typically these damages are in very high value. So either of the two parties should be made to pay. And if it is there in the contract, it's there in the contract. So in case any such, you must have, of course, read about it, right, guys? So many times, typically large IT companies have got into a major breach of contract with clients, and they have gone to the court, and eventually the court settled in based on what was written in the contract, right? So, and then this is damage both sides, guys. Look at point number 5. It says likely consequences of termination have to be included, because including the delivery to the customer, of work in progress things. Let's say some software codes are being developed, and some of them are in testing stage, some of them are in conception stage, and suddenly, the service provider walks off. So what I'm saying is, both ways parties are vulnerable. So we need to ensure that in the contract formation, this is addressed essentially. So for example, termination, right? How do we address it? We address it by including a termination clause. So as a Agile SME, you may be asked that what do you think would be the extent of, ramifications to us as a service provider in case the client terminates somewhere in between. Yeah. And that is somewhere where you can keep some guidance and give some guidance to the contract formation team. Okay, let's come back to the king of agile contracting for now: time and material, hourly billing rate kind of contract. So guys, flexibility, number one. Every customer is moving to agile because of, that it provides a lot of flexibility to them. All right, good enough. Second, requirement. Agile projects do not fix the scope, since the requirements evolve as we go ahead with the project. So it is a good way to go ahead, and hence people are preferring requirement perspective as well. Third thing, just in time. What's that? Agile is based on the principle of just in time, right? So what is just in time? Hey, Mr. Business, you tell me the requirement. I will take 2 days to develop it, test it, and ship it back to you in the system. It's just in time, right? So a time and material contracting is very suitable for agile projects because honestly, guys, the nature of work is such. So if the nature of work is just in time, why shouldn't the pricing be also just in time? Which basically means just on the hourly rate. Fourth thing is prioritization. So customer defines the scope and decides the scope for each release, right? So customer decides a lot. So who's customer here? Product owner. What does the product owner decides? What is the product backlog? How much of it is going to get into sprint one? What is going to get prioritized in sprint one? When do they need the delivery of that particular sprint one? So on and on. Yeah. So if so much of flexibility is already there, with the client, then I think they should be more agreeable to time and material. And time and material is a very clean contract. So here the billing is based purely on the actual consumption of the effort of the project resources. So we guys, fill up the timesheets, right? So let's say 5 of us are working on a project. But first day we all work for 9 hours, right? That's a 45 hour worth of a day. And let's say next day we all filled up timesheet to let's say 5 hours. It's only 25 hours. And the client is going to pay only for that. So this way, typically, it suits us, it suits them. Okay, so and then of course, guys, the scope volatility, right? So scope is of course volatile. So it is advisable to track the changes requested in the sprint execution, right? So you got some requirements from product owner, you started developing it. The sprint was already 40% complete. Suddenly, the product owner came back and said, "Hey, we spoke about some requirements on Monday. All right, I want to make certain changes to 2 of them." Now, since Agile guarantees the client with this flexibility, so you can't help it, but you have to say, all right, we'll make those changes. But what's important is that make sure that your velocity, which is your Agile metric, right? It's going to get hit. So your velocity is going to go down, which means your ability to deliver the user stories goes down, right? Because you were going to deliver 6 user stories and suddenly they came back and said, hey, you know what? Those 2 requirement needs change. So if the scope is going to change, then obviously your velocity will get hit, right? So you need to give that a clear heads up to the client. Okay. Now what are the fundamental highlights of the time and material contract, guys? One, rate of resources. So that's a per hour, dollar rate which you are going to give to the client. So it's open, guys. So in time and material, you can give them an hourly rate, you can give them a daily rate, a weekly rate, or a monthly rate. So as I think best as a service provider, I can give any kind of a rate, to the client for let's say 7. So I can let's say, okay, if he's 10 hours an hour, I can give his rate as $10 per hour, for example. It's going to be daily, so every day someone's going to work 9 hours. So I'll say, okay, 9 into 10, 90. So his daily rate becomes 90. Similarly, weekly, similarly, monthly, right? Progress tracking. So to effectively manage the time and material project, guys, we need to put in place strong project managers, because you've seen that, right? Agile is nothing less than a big khichdi, right? So many changes are happening. So scope is getting into a flux. Team sizing, skilling, estimation is all in a state of flux. So you need strong project managers to track the agile projects. And now don't forget that after completing agile module, we are going into a project management module. So see, that is how this course has been structured, so that to give you a complete perspective of Agile and also give you a strong perspective of the project management as well. So that, it's like obviously it's a terrific combination, right? You are a Agilist and you're a project manager as well. That is how, the opportunities should look better. Okay. So, um, What is this? The the biggest advantage of guys time and material model is that we are able to retain and lock external skilled resources for the entire project duration. So let's say many times you don't have skill sets, in your team. You are the service provider. No, you have to provide those skills to the project if you want to complete it, right? So what you do is that you get external hiring, you do external hiring, you bring those skill sets, okay, and you pay them an X money and you charge X plus two from the client, right? So the advantage of time and material is that you can get skills from anywhere, and all of them will get billed to the client on the agreed per hour rate. Okay, and one more advantage of agile is to that it helps to prevent cost escalations. So in order to prevent uncontrolled cost escalations, right, an upper limit or a cap on the cost is advisable. Yep. So we call this time and material model with a cap, with an upper cap or a upper limit. So this means you will say, okay, you know what? We have a time and material contract with this client. Fine. And there's a 20% maximum allowable upper cap, definite limit defined, which means, hey, you want to make changes in your sprints, you can, Mr. Client, you can go ahead and make those changes. But honestly, it can spike up my effort by 20%, but no more. If thanks to your changes, if my effort of 100 days, of man hours goes to 130 man hours, which means it goes up by 30%, I'm going to put an add-on charge to you. So guys, these are the very, democratic way of doing the discussion with the client. You can tell them that we are giving you a flexibility nevertheless and all that. But the fact is, if it goes beyond the limit, we'll have to put an incremental additional charge on you. Yeah. This is how, guys, we establish contracts with the clients, but in good spirits. Okay. So. All right. Guys, just give me 30 seconds, please. Yeah, just 30 seconds. By the time you can please read this slide and try to understand what best you can. All right, guys, I'm back. Okay. Uh, so, guys, honestly, if you ask me, this entire contracting discussion is going to more put you in the role of a negotiator, to be honest. Okay. So once you understand the key principles of designing this time and material perspective, you will be able to contribute very well to those discussions. And since there will be no other agile SME, by the way, only you, so this really spikes up your value very well in the organization. That's what I've seen. Okay. Then there's something called um, how to articulate the benefits of time and material. Okay. Now, with time and materials, number one, changes, simply move other items down in the backlog. So what I want to, probably start the discussion here is the changes which are given by the client should not be treated as problems. As we say, let's appreciate that changes are pure business perspective, guys. If they gotta come, they gotta come. So let's treat them with the respect. Changes are there, it's there. We're not gonna sulk about it. Okay. So because if the changes come, what happens is that changes take precedence over the kind of functionality or what you're trying to design. So you dump that and you start the new one, and that the one which you dumped straightway moves back into the product backlog list. So it's like a replacement, like a replacement. So, and then the team starts developing, as number two says, starts developing the new one, pretty quickly, the change one. Now, the third thing is that the time to market is crashed, so the team can take a validation with the market, because the change which came was because the market wanted something else. So business communicated that back to you, so you were able to implement that change in the system as per the market perspective. So that way it strengthened your client's business, guys. And the third thing is that the change, if it is not longer than the original functionality that you were trying to build, it's going to get you faster to the market, right? Fourth point is assessment and validations about how much work can get done within a specific time also gets very cleared. Risk, right, it gets reduced because when you made a change in your ongoing functionality, right, that time you're able to rework on the risk matrix. Yeah. So with each iteration, guys, the development team gets a more realistic feedback from the user, and it helps the development team to make the next sprint better than the first. So second is better than first, third is better than second, fourth is better than all those sprints put together in the beginning itself, because that time the team was learning, but now we are so familiar with the client, with the product, with the methodologies and what they like, what they really like, what realistically do they like in the product. So with that kind of an experiential curve, what I'm trying to say is that you know time and material model eventually ends up being very, very beneficial to both the parties. Okay. So what are some of the key highlights of actually operationalizing time and material contract? First, start and stop anytime, which means you can start things, but at the first instance of the fact that you notice that it is not going right, you can stop it ASAP, make the correction, and then move forward. What will happen is that your billing is going to happen along, just according to the timesheets that you have filled up. So that neither hurts the client, neither hurts you, but it gives amazing flexibility in terms of making correction, and during that correction process, at least the billing part is stopped. Second ways of execution of time and material is that the trust the partners. Yeah. So client can trust the service provider for the control over the scope of development and assume that they are using it the time effectively. So in time and material, guys, typically it works both ways. If the team doesn't perform too well, then the client, gets a lot of heartache because they are paying you by dollar basis. And if your work is good, they feel very nice because you have taken the risks upon yourself. You're creating all the deliverables upon yourself. Yeah, and so they just have to validate or review, etc. Don't get too welcoming to the ideas. So knowing that the developers will implement anything as per their, let's let's say, discretion, guys. So the team may, we need to think about that. So team starts getting ambitious. So you as a agile coach, if you do not keep a tab on your developers, developers have an uncanny ability to develop the product anyways they like, because they have the flexibility of creation of a code, right? So code is like, you create a code, it can drive the system in any direction. So you need to be careful in time and material, and keep a control on the scope development and the team development. Yeah. Okay. And guys, remember, you are working on an hourly basis. So remember, you have to keep the team in high spirits because, frankly, motivation is the whole key in this kind of a scenario. Okay. So this is the four ways of execution. All right. So we did a decent amount of, details on the time and material. Now let's understand fixed price in greater detail, because see guys, fixed price, is also equally important, because honestly, lot of customers, lot of them, large majority of them, unless as a service provider we can influence them, I'll tell you that, they are largely in favor of getting a fixed price contract from the service provider. Okay. Now forget that hourly pricing perspective. Please come to the fact to realize that now everything is fixed. The scope you will deliver as a service provider is fixed. The timeline in which you will deliver the project to the client is fixed. The cost in which you will be delivering, what X amount of dollar value you want to give to the client, it's fixed. So, what should I say, man? The fixed price contract. I mean, since the scope is fixed, guys, the agile and fixed price contracts compromises the agile manifesto. Okay, such as responding to a change over following a plan. So the customer is still demanding for fixed price contracts even today. Of course, they demand it all the time in order to budget better, to avoid financial risks, and to make the service provider or vendor accountable for the delivery. Okay. A fixed price model, guys, is a contracting and pricing approach where all three elements, scope, time, and cost, are fixed. I think I mentioned that right in the beginning. So, very interesting, guys. Since you have given a fixed price contract to the client, you have to make sure that you get the, initial requirements and other things very, very right. That's why, in the fixed price model, more effort is involved in upfront planning and estimation. Um, Okay, so one funny thing is that, the fixed price contracts are actually, seen as anti-agile. You know why? Because I mean everything is fixed, right? Agile is supposed to be agile, flexible, okay, shake here and there. But fixed price is fixed in terms of, project cost, project resources, or the other things. So all the three dimensions of the contract, are fixed. which is unfortunately against the spirit of Agile, which says, guys, I can be flexible. But in a fixed price, you can't be flexible on either scope or timeline or duration of the project or the cost of the project. Okay, going deeper into the fixed price contracting for Agile, the first one is changing the scope. If the customer changes the scope when the project is being underway within sprints, okay, the provider will suffer, obviously, because the reduced margins, either they will suffer reduced margin or incur extra cost that will likely jeopardize the relationship, right? So, I mean, I've done, let's say, 10, sprint cycles, and certainly in 11, what the client comes back and says as the scope is changing, right? So it hurts the service provider because they have accomplished something in the sprint, and now you're coming and changing it up. Okay, all right. Then comes billing, anticipating such predictable changes. What the service providers did, they will embed such some of the risks into the project plan and into the budget as well. That's where, guys, I mentioned service providers apply contingency. Okay, so this means that whatever is their cost, they apply some extra percentage on top of it, which can give them an extra level playing field in case they run into a tight corner. So contingency is that extra kind of I would say charge which is hidden. It is applied in the contract because we don't want that the service provider's bottom line should get hit. Yeah. So, and then is hostilities and conflicts. The other shortcoming of this model, fixed price, is that instead of encouraging effective working atmosphere between the two people, it leads to hostilities when it comes, when the teams from both sides do not get along. Okay, guys, anything? Okay, so these are the challenges, yeah. Okay, I think the slide will say it all. So fixed price, guys, very, very unrealistic, honestly, to do agile projects in fixed price contract because budget is fixed, timeline is fixed, scope is fixed. I just can't move an inch, man. I mean, so I don't know about the perfection part, but it's very dangerous minefield if you're stepping into a agile project which is on fixed price. Okay, now this slide is trying to show us the fixed price reality. Establishing those three variables often takes more time than actually the development itself. Okay, so especially if you want to be certain of what you have established. So look at it, guys. There was a fixed budget, there was a fixed timeline, there was a fixed scope. Within that, I said, hey, can I deliver the scope within the fixed timeline that you're given? Yeah, I would have calculated and said maybe yes. Yeah. If I say, hey, within the fixed scope, okay, has to be delivered within a fixed budget. You might say, all right, probably it's doable. And you say, hey, I got a fixed budget and I got a fixed timeline. Can I will be able to deliver? The emphatic answer is yeah, looks quite realistic. So guys, between now possible, doable, and realistic, if you see, there is a small area where you will, you will not be able to bring all the three things together. It's impossible. Yeah. So that is why when the central portion says almost never happens, it means that in terms of realism, doability, and possibility, it will probably never go that way. Okay, let me tell you some potential pitfalls of fixed price. Point one, during mid development of, when the team was right somewhere in the middle of the development program, a new idea came up, and then it changed the work altogether. Second thing is, in time and material, you are still able to quickly show some prototypes to the customer, because it's time and material, right? I mean, you devote 3 hours, 2 hours separately to the time and material, that also gets charged, right, to the client, which is fine. But honestly, we don't allow that. So tomorrow, next time when you are traveling outside your, sorry, that point was, if you're traveling outside your comfort zone of agile metrics, then I would say don't step into fixed price contracting at all. Okay, I've burned my fingers at least 3 4 times, guys, and it turns very nasty. What happens is that the client tags to your tail that since you have given me a fixed price contract, you need to deliver it, and the business condition on their sides are so hectic that I just, me and the team are not able to make head or toe about how do we deal with the frequent changes, how do we deal with lack of product owner, how do we deal with lack of good user stories, blah blah blah. And in that case, guys, it runs very very difficult. Yeah. So um so the feedback mechanism, typically if you're on time and material, what, well, you'll get outside your regular 8 9 hours of work, you'll devote probably a 2 hours, create a quick POC, show it to the user, take the feedback, you are fine, he's fine. How? Because you devoted that extra 2 hours, you get billed for those 2 extra hours. You devoted, sorry, you were able to show a POC, you were able to get very good feedback from the user, realistic one, and now you know what he likes to, so you'll deliver that functionality accordingly. So what is the good thing here? Good thing is that if you have that right flexibility, but in fixed price, you won't be able to dedicate 2 extra hours to create a POC, because that's not part of your scope. Another challenge to fixed price is, let's say, if the market changes or the company process itself changes. Now, you gave a fixed price to the contract, trying to negotiate the fact that how critical, business critical or complex the scope part is. Now, when suddenly in between, the market changes, the process changes, and then lot of tremendous amount of changes come from the client, it's impossible now to address that, because you are on a time and material contract. Oh, I'm so sorry, you are on a fixed price contract. So frankly, you don't even have an inch to move this way or that way. So in all such cases, guys, where market changes, business model changes, a third party system on which there's a lot of reliance of your client, even that changes, then frankly, how do you address the change? You address the change, by just tracking on an hourly basis what kind of help is required from your side. That's why time and material is really simple that way, because you just do your work and then you plot your timesheet, and that gets built. Now imagine in fixed price, I don't have any of these options. Oops, the lesser we talk about fixed price, better, guys. And another thing is, which is a very funny thing, but it happens, guys, that sometimes, you get changes from users through user stories, which is fine. But many times the change which is to be done is so weird that it's impossible to create those features. Now, if you have given a fixed price per user story, you're given fixed price per sprint cycle, you're given a fixed price per deliverable, right? What do you do now? They have given you a requirement which are impossible to develop, right? And so since you won't be able to develop that, right, you won't charge for it. But the fact is that you had your entire team on the ground. Had this been a time and material, you would have dedicated some few hours to it, charge for it, and then tell them whether this is doable or not doable, right? Establishing absolutely all requirements on everything not possible. Okay, you can just have a quick read, guys. I mean, now you are very, very conversant with all this. Because it's essentially, yeah. Okay, look at this slide, guys. I mean, you'll have a very kind of in good deeper insights, right? So So you know what? I mean, there was a constant struggle. You said, hey, time and material is good, fixed price is bad, client says something else. So you decided to get into a hybrid mode. What did we do? In agile contracting, we have two contracts, fixed price, time and material. What we did, we split the fixed price further. We split the fixed price into fixed capacity and variable scope, which means we told the client that your project will need 20 people. Okay. We are splitting the team as core team and variable team. Fantastic. Core team is going to be on fixed price. So for core team, you know, who's going to complete this work in 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever, I'm quoting a fixed price of let's say $1 million. All right. And the variable team is going to be on time and material. So whatever is the core scope of yours, which will not change, I will dedicate a core team to it. Charge fixed capacity for it. For all your changes, you know, the scope changes, for those departments which keep changing requirements, for those departments where you are forecasted that the requirements will change, you know, right from the beginning, I'll dedicate that as a variable team. And you know, you can charge them, we can charge them to you on a per hour basis. Does that make sense, guys? Fixed, defined, clear scope goes into a fixed price, and all undefined, unpredictable, you know, kind of a scope goes into variable price. Variable price is time and material, fixed price is fixed capacity. Does it make sense, guys? Because if it does, then I would say that you have kind of understood the necessary flexibility which you must bring in into your contracting models. And there could be amazing amount of scenarios, but you just have to first understand clearly what is their scope, what is their attitude, and what are the likely risks you will run into in case you give them either of the pricing model. All right. So guys, I think some of the sliders we may not be doing right now. I want to do something else. Models, terms, conditions. Yeah, okay. This is a cool slide, guys. Look at it. I've compared the pricing models. Okay. So um, this is fixed. This is TNM. Okay. So I'll tell you the characteristics, you know, for which you can offer them either of the two models. So guys, for all small and medium projects, you can give them fixed price. But if it is medium to large, you have to give time and material. Okay. If there is a project on which the requirements are already defined, you can still go for a fixed price. But for a project which is, you know, evolving still, all right, there's a lot of thinking going on in terms of what transformations to make and why. Please keep in on time and material. Okay, reason, because it is still very dynamic. If your requirements are all defined, then obviously it's more of a stable perspective, right? You can still give a fixed price on that. Let's look at that point called client control. So guys, on fixed price, the client control is very little, yeah, because service provider, when they gave a fixed price, they have complete responsibility of the project. So clients only does some overseeing, but that's the reverse in case of time and material. Okay, we have some class discussions. Okay, let me just check what we are left with now. Types of strategies, solution pointers. Fixed price. This is done. A lot of class discussion, guys. I think. Okay, let's do this one. Yeah, this is continuation of what we have been doing. So guys, apart from fixed and time and material, we have another model called dedicated team model. And remember, we also discussed that, okay, for for some part of the project, you can give a dedicated team. For rest of the part of the project, you can just keep it on a flex basis, a flexible time and material basis. Then there's another model called dedicated team model. Okay. In this, guys, what we do is we take a conservative estimate of how many people the client needs to do agile developments. Okay. Now we take a look at the client's ecosystem. We assess the kind of changes which they need. Okay. We just create a product backlog. From there, the product owner chooses what are business critical and business significant. Okay, and then he places it out in the sprint planning. We plan the sprints. Okay, they could be 3, 4, 5, 10, whatever number of sprints are really required, and we plan the whole thing out with him, with the client or the product owner. Yeah. Now, guys, what we say is that, let's say, for the prioritized business critical needs, let's say if whatever is amount of right size team size they need, we give them that team size and call them dedicated senior team model. Yeah. So why did we do this? We do this because in case we feel that either time and material or fixed price is not really going to get the attentions of the client. What are they looking at? They're looking at niche skills, key skills, senior fellows, okay, to be treated in the right commercial model, and hence we give it a dedicated team model. So it's all right, Mr. Client, this is 7 people dedicated for you. I know you need 12, but keep these 7. These are the core people. They are senior. They will drive discussion. They will create designs. Okay, everything, etc. And apart from that, whatever need, we will probably keep it on a flex basis as required. Okay, so where does the dedicated team model begin? Number 1.1, request comes. Number 2, skill analysis happens, and when we propose a team, right? Third, we as service provider finalize a core set of 5, 6 people or whatever, and then we give them dedicated team members to do the work as well. Then the task is given to them. Then the team works as per the task assigned to them. Of course, the priority has to be met. So what happens here is that the team works in itself. Okay, they needed 12 or 15. We gave them only 7. So obviously all the right attention comes onto this dedicated core team. All right. So they enjoy working. Client enjoys them because client was in need of senior skill sets of team who can be dedicated to them, and that includes a timeline. For example, client says, all right, give me a team which is dedicated only to me for next 3 years. Those people will not move away into other projects. So we do that. We create a dedicated team. We include all the necessary right skills into it, and we make them a self-sufficient, self-organized kind of a typical agile sharpshooting team. And then the customer is able to see the value in it. Okay, and then the what happens is that then the commercial models become no longer remain a controversy, because here the client can see a clear value. He's able to see that we as service providers have empathized with his needs and requirements so as to give him the best treatment possible in form of a solution, right? So either way, guys, I mean, it makes it's like typically what we call wow the customer. So we got to do it either way. We got to do it either way. Yeah. Okay. So let's spend, a few minutes on advantages and drawbacks of this dedicated team model. So number one, it's obviously, as you would have very well understood by the common sense guys, that it's suitable for long-term projects. So clients say, all right, give me 10 people, give me for 3 years, all right, and I'll be happy. We give him no time and material, no fixed price. We rather give him this dedicated team and charge for it, right? Second thing is the budgets of the client, are fully predictable. Okay, so we can give a dedicated team knowing that if my per month billing of the dedicated team is $100,000, then the client should be able to pretty much take care of that bill. So why the client gets thrilled out of this thing is, guys, because we tell the guys, you have a complete control over this team. You can select them, you can motivate them, you can bring it over to your onshore locations, blah blah blah, right? But we are giving you intelligent people who can clearly understand your expectation and objectives. And all these things, in all such cases, dedicated teams works wonderful. Of course, there's a drawback as well. I mean, suppose let's say you put the dedicated team for a short-term project, it's a bad idea, because the client won't be able to fully utilize that, and hence they will stay underutilized. Second thing is, dedicated team members have less opportunity to learn the new techniques, because since they are dedicated to one particular project, they don't learn anything beyond the project because they have to live in that project for 3 years. So the motivation sometimes goes down of our people, right? And here, guys, remember, we gave 10 dedicated people to the client. Now it's client's job to take active control in terms of their motivations, in terms of their communications, in terms of learning from them, in terms of getting their people trained from them, and etc etc etc. Yeah. So the client has to get more active in case they opt for a dedicated team model. Okay. All right, except for I think 6 slides, guys, we have pretty much completed this. Okay, so I think that is something which we will do after we complete one more topic, and that is called Agile metrics, right? And that tells us all about what are the key performance indicators we need to keep in mind as an Agile coach while we continue doing Agile project implementations. Yeah. All right, guys, now it's time for the gods. So I think we have to take leave now. Hey, I would just like to remind guys, whoever is not yet sent BRD, please send Ritika, Arpita. I don't think I got, BRDs from you guys. So please send it over. And guys, let the other guys know as well. It's kind of important, okay, because very soon we'll be completing Agile module in another one weekend, and then we will do a major case study for that also, right? So we need to then before that, at least complete your BRD and send it to me. All right, guys, is it good? Are we good now? Are we good together? All right, great. Fine, guys, thank you very much for your attentions. Thanks for being around. Thanks for bearing me up. Thanks for responding to me when I was needed your help. So that's fine. So guys, 2 more topics of Agile. We complete Agile, we shift to the case study. Before 2 weekends from now, we'll be probably stepping into the project management part. All right. All right, guys, great. So have a nice Sunday evening ahead, and I'll talk to you next Saturday. Over and out for now. Thanks. Bye.